What's the state of your website? If you're looking for a new digital experience platform, or DXP, to run your digital experiences, I have the book for you. The Agile Brand Guide to Digital Experience Platforms is part of my best-selling series of MarTech books. In this book, I explore and demystify DXPs and look at the roles a digital experience platform should play, the different types on the market, as well as how to initially evaluate platforms, then how to best implement a DXP once you've selected it. The book also features a foreword from Rupali Jain, Chief Product Officer at leading DXP provider Optimizely, as well as several other thought leaders in the industry. Learn more and get a copy in print or digital now by going to the Agile Brand Guide website at www.agilebrandguide.com. Hi, this is Greg. Look for my book, The Agile Brand, on Amazon or on my website at theagile.world. Hi, my name is Greg Kihlstrom, and I'm the host of the Agile World podcast. I'm excited to introduce this special episode brought to you by TEKsystems. Today, we're going to talk about a very important topic, the digital customer experience, and how organizations can use tools like content management systems and personalization to better connect with their audiences. So with that, I'd like to welcome Burk Buechler, Managing Director of Digital Solutions at TEKsystems, to the show. Burk, tell me a little bit about TEKsystems and what you do there.
Hey, thanks, Greg, and thanks for letting me be on the show. I love the show, and I'm a big fan of the work you're doing in this space. So I lead the digital practice for TEKsystems Global Services, which is the digital and creative arm of one of North America's largest services firms. We serve most of the Fortune 500. And Greg, our customers in digital are heads of marketing and creative, lines of business and experience executives who are really interested in getting a better return on their digital investments. They may be disillusioned with a previous partner or just really looking for a trusted advisor. And I'm based in Austin, Texas, a city I love dearly.
And so, today we're gonna touch on a lot of different aspects of this customer experience that you mentioned. So let's just start with a question here. Why do you think there is such a focus on CX? I know it's hard to read a blog or an article or anything without kind of seeing this mention. So what do you think got us here, and how do brands keep up?
Yeah, we've seen marketing budgets consistently expand each year, Greg, in support of digital initiatives. There's absolutely been a user experience awakening across the software development process, the content management process. And you asked a great question because it's been largely accepted that the faster a company can adopt, personalize, and release the newest applications, the larger its competitive advantage in the market. Customers realize that every application has an experience. The question they're really asking themselves is whether or not that experience is good.
Yeah, so I recently read an article that you wrote on LinkedIn about business architecture and talking through kind of the steps involved in having a robust, sustainable business architecture. So where would you recommend that a brand start in all of this? Because it's a long process, and really to do as we all know, like to do CX well, it never really ends. But where would you recommend that a brand starts?
Yeah, great question, Greg. So I see organizations of all sizes struggle with this type of digital transformation, particularly in areas like CX, content management systems. Typically, it's due to a misalignment of those business objectives and digital initiatives. The way it shows up is that many customer experience projects fail or really don't deliver on their promised benefits. Now, when we dig a bit deeper with our customers, we usually find agreement on the overall direction and initiative. But beneath the surface, oftentimes there's really ill-defined business models and goals which aren't known to be so weak until the project advances to that point of no return. So consequently, Greg, I'm a big proponent of always exploring the underlying business model early on and aligning to how digital serves that model. And like you called out, I wrote an article on LinkedIn that kind of highlighted some ways that we do that, and it's served us well in past projects.
So let's talk about the customer journey. I mean, certainly that's a key component of really understanding all of this stuff and orchestrating all of it. So from the customer perspective, when you're initiating a conversation with them, let's say, in the awareness stage of the journey, so, early on, what's the main message that a brand should really keep in mind, and what other considerations are there?
Yeah, so our objective overall is just to act as a trusted partner in their journey, in their digital journey. I would say that we accelerate, kind of help them accelerate innovation. I mean, as you know, Greg, customer experience is extremely dynamic. It's really a function of previous expectations. So it's critical that organizations continuously innovate in this space. And so we help customers use analytics and data to understand how customers perceive the brand experience across channels and the full customer lifecycle. And by providing, the kind of specialty skill sets and also just expertise around leadership and execution the customers need from a single source, we can really help deliver those new experiences quickly for them.
So I've seen, throughout my career, I've built a lot of websites, and I've done, I've kind of played in a bunch of different areas. And one of the key things that anyone really in a consulting capacity always needs to keep stressing is, the value of the work at hand. So I've seen over time, sometimes the value of a website project has become diminished over time, as if it's really just a brochureware or something like that. So when a lot of the work that you do involves more enterprise content management, it involves things like personalization and other things like that. So how do you not only how do you perceive the value, but how do you teach clients to really understand and understand the value of these things, and in today's business landscape? And I would imagine, follow on to that, I would imagine often that is selling into, whether it's a CIO, CTO, or CMO, and giving them the tools to really give to their whoever their stakeholders are, to really understand and express the value.
Yeah, absolutely, Greg. I mean, doing user experience at scale requires a really good alignment to tested frameworks and methods on doing it correctly. We obviously have a pretty comprehensive methodology to deliver on customer experience initiatives. For example, design thinking is a framework for innovation that allows organizations to really optimize process using that outside in view, where they can leverage principles of human empathy and storytelling. Um, Frameworks like rapid prototyping ensures really that speed of execution that's so important in these types of solutions. Um, and when I think about working with enterprise customers, oftentimes the discussion kind of comes to, how do we really do it at scale? How do we take that one-on-one marketing or personalizing each individual interaction with each customer at scale? And so when we think about that, what we think about is that it really means, using what we know about customers, namely the data, to deliver the right content at the right time across channels. And while technology is a key enabler, things like the cultural transformation, utilizing frameworks like organizational change management plays a very important role, because in any solution that we help deliver, Greg, we want to make sure we nurture its adoption and encourage its exploitation across the enterprise for maximum benefit to the organization.
I often think a lot more organizations should keep things like that in mind. I mean, quite often the things that drive organizations to, let's talk specifically about a website. Sometimes the things that drive them are not necessarily the most strategic, or things like that. Are you seeing a shift in what's kind of driving organizations to do some of the more sophisticated work that you're doing, or where do you see things now?
Yeah, I mean, I think when we look at what's driving organizations to implement, I mean, I think it's really gotten to the point, Greg, where good digital experience and customer experience is a matter of survival. Which is
Yeah.
why we're seeing a lot of these initiatives and conversations taking place all the way up to the C-suite. The customer experience innovators out there, many, small to medium upstarts, to even, companies like Amazon are really a threat to a growing list of companies, not just in the B2C space, but also in the B2B markets. Traditional industry leaders who are not transforming their business models, cultures, platforms to focus on the customer quickly enough are being disrupted and in some cases put out of business. I mean, take a look at Sears. It's a great example of how that manifested in a pretty short period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is definitely changing quickly, and it's I think the Amazon phenomenon alone has kind of changed the landscape, and those who really don't adapt are going to be subject. I always say if an industry hasn't been disrupted already, it will be soon. It's just because of all of these opportunities.
That's right.
With these things, where do you see the biggest opportunities, or maybe I know you work with a lot of different types of clients, but where do you see the biggest opportunities, and particularly when we're talking about investing in things that do provide ROI, whether that's maybe low hanging fruit or like a quick win, or where do you see the big opportunities now?
Yeah, so I think a couple thoughts there. I mean, when I look at the overall value of kind of customer experience, content management systems and personalization, I think it's all about the value of delivering those compelling experiences. It's not about fancy websites with cool images. It's really about what is the experience and content that helps them solve a problem, and that's got to be the North Star that every initiative aligns to. Historically, Greg, as you know, the value of CMS platforms has been largely around speed to market, brand consistency across channels, obviously along with, cost takeout opportunities when you retire legacy systems, moving to cloud and even things like automating workflow. But today, we're seeing the CMS platforms have really evolved into kind of that whole digital experience platform. When you look at leaders like Adobe Experience Manager, Sitecore Experience Platform. These more mature CMSs still deliver the benefits of that speed and consistency, but they also support the integration of analytics and personalization into that whole content management workflow. So when those are really properly implemented, and we see in many cases they really aren't properly implemented, businesses can then personalize that content across channels, which is so valuable. They can not only do that, but they can also measure how well that content performs, rapidly adjust, based on alignment to key performance indicators for their business. Whether that might be something like more traffic, higher conversion rates, even more revenue, better customer experience. And so with that, I mean, it creates, I think, a lot of opportunities for investment for them.
So you mentioned, sometimes you run across clients whose, whether it's their internal team or their previous agency didn't set things up well, or, didn't take the best approach. What are some common pitfalls or some common things that you might give, advice to either a new potential client, or just to kind of avoid some of the bad experiences that some organizations face?
Yeah, great question. And yeah, we've seen a number of areas. I mean, I think, overall we see, a number of customers struggle with kind of ultimately balancing their needs around kind of broad areas of expertise, and with the right execution model for their business. Also customers view the whole kind of CMS platform, and an answer in themselves, and oftentimes don't plan comprehensively enough to get the benefits that platform might have to offer. Typical example might be, they focus on replatforming content, but they defer the implementation of, analytics and personalization. They may not also include the organizational change management we talked about earlier to really benefit from the new technology. So what we always talk about is, it's important that they look at their projects as that enabler of that customer-centric transformation rather than just a way to, as an example, manage more content effectively. If they have that view, it can help a lot, and it leads to the use of key platform features earlier than would otherwise be the case, and that in turn, accelerates that organizational learning and return on investment.
So you mentioned organizational change management. We touched on it a little bit earlier as well. Let's shift to talk a little bit more about this, this holistic view of organizations and customer experience. When you think about organizations that are doing CX right, what qualities do they have? What are they doing?
Yeah, great question. So I would say it's a few things. I mean, it's raising that customer experience to its proper place in the C-suite. So what does that mean? That means looking critically at, the historically successful business models and products to stay ahead of that CX-based disruption that you and I talked about earlier. I think, the other qualities we see of customers that are really doing it well is that they adopt that customer-centric and design-based thinking for digital across the customer lifecycle. For example, we worked with one large bank that was really training employees and how to focus on serving the customer rather than just managing internal processes and products, right? And prioritizing some of the IT investments around improving the customer experience, using frameworks and methodologies like Lean Agile to bring those investments really fast to market. So you're in this mode of kind of launch, learning, and adapting very quickly. And then, lastly, I'd say that, another quality we see is that, customers that do it right really leverage some beneficial services partnerships to overcome the challenge of, hiring and retaining the leadership and the talent required for them to succeed.
No, that's great. And I mean, that definitely touches on, this is not, customer experience is not a single department. It takes everything, it's top down, it's bottom up, it's really across an entire organization. And so with that, I mean, I think, and I write a fair amount about, CX measurements and things like that as well. How do you, when you're talking with a client, how do you recommend that they measure success, knowing, again, some of the complexities and potentially some of the barriers that they may face in really measuring things across an organization?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we as part of our process, we help define, the business goals of the client. Typically, it's done during what we call our inception phase. There's an activity where we align kind of the key performance indicators with the business values and goals. And then we use those KPIs to measure our success and the customer success afterwards. These are areas like customer retention, conversion rates, employee and customer engagement, new revenue models, customer experience scores are just a few examples of areas that we engage in. And it's really important to map those out at the beginning of projects because we always want to be revisiting them throughout the effort.
Last question for you, really. This. So I would imagine, you go through this process. You get clients to a great point where they're set up for success. Whatever that exact scope of that project is, how do you recommend and even work in the longer term to make sure that they're continuing to optimize and improve everything? I mean, I talk about that a lot in my book, the Agile Brand, that it's not just set it and forget it anymore. It's it's this continual Sometimes it's an agile process, but it's always this continual iterative process. So how do you work with clients, and what do you recommend for them in order to do that?
Yeah, great question. So it like, Greg, it's many things. Just a number off the top of my head. I mean, when you bring in lean agile practices, really good business architecture, design-based thinking, rapid prototyping, just to name a few. And what we're doing on the global services front is we're continuing to improve for our customers by, harvesting the intellectual property we deliver across projects in the form of, accelerators, reusable components, reference architectures, so that we can continually bring that innovation back to our customers and help them with their customer experience initiatives.
Well, thank you so much for joining the show. I'd like to thank Burk Buechler, Managing Director of Digital Solutions at TEKsystems. Thanks for joining the show.
Great. Thanks a lot, Greg.
And again, this is Greg Kihlstrom. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and found it helpful, please rate the show on iTunes or contact me through my website at theagile.world. You can find my books, The Agile Brand and The Agile Web, on Amazon and on my website at theagile.world.